We are live. Welcome, everyone. We are here for a very special evening of Stories for Healing. Tonight, we have a double header. We have two storytellers to grace us with their stories about healing tonight. And just before we start, I want to remind you that this is something that we're doing every day at 2:30 and 8 p.m. East Coast time, 7 days a week, because, we're in a really kind of terrible place, whether it's your community or your country or the world. And while those of us who are suffering through the US election think we've got it bad, we're not the only ones. We all could use some healing. So what do we as storytellers do? We tell stories, and we come out with our hearts open and ready to help us all heal. Heal by telling, and heal by hearing, and heal by just being around. So tonight, we're going to have two storytellers, as I mentioned, Laura Packer and Kristen Pedamonte, and we are going to start tonight with Laura. We'll take a short interlude between the two. We'll just say hi, and then Kristen will join us. So for now, though, let's start with Laura. Laura, please tell us a story.
Well, first, Jim, thank you so much for setting this up for all of us. It's something that we all need and the whole world needs. And we as storytellers, well, we are especially equipped, I think, to help people find their own healing and find their path and to keep them company on the way. So really, truly, I am so grateful to you for doing this. I know that I needed it, and I'm sure others have too. Tonight, I have one story to share with you that is a retelling of several connected Arthurian legends. I love the Arthurian legends. I grew up with them and I was quite passionate about them as a child and then moved away from them as I became an adult. And when I was thinking about what to tell today, these two stories, they stuck with me and they said, these are the ones you must tell. They demanded my attention. So, I have witnessed two miracles in my life. One, the stories say I was a part of, but really all I did was I gave a thirsty man water to drink. Let me tell you of them both. When I was a young man in King Arthur's court, I saw such joy and such sorrow. I saw pageantry and pain. I saw supplicants and bodies writhing on the battlefield. It was such a life for a young man such as myself. First, I watched all of the knights in great envy, but in time, I found a sword in my own hand, and soon I was jousting and battling and carousing with the rest of them. It was a fine life. But even then, I found myself questioning if we are here in the name of chivalry and kindness, then why are we in the midst of all of this luxury? But no matter. There were so many visitors who came to the court at Camelot, all of them in their glory, dripping with gold and jewels, wearing the finest cloth they could find. They would bow low before the king and watch the rest of us out of the corners of their eyes to see if we appreciated their beauty. All of them, that is, except for Sir Ur. Sir Ur was a knight from Hungary, and when he came to us, he was not beautiful. He was not dressed in finery. He had neither gold nor jewels. Sir Ur was carried in on a pallet by 4 of his servants, and we knew when he was coming to us before we could see him because, the stench that carried with him, it was beyond description. He was rotting from the outside in, subject to a curse. When he appeared before the king, he could not bow. He was too weak and in too much pain. His servants lowered the pallet to the ground, and then he told us that as a young man, he had been in a tournament, just as so many of us had been, and he killed his opponent. It was an unfortunate accident, but not uncommon. I had seen it happen time and again, but his opponent's mother, well, she did not take kindly to her boy being killed, so she cursed Sir Ur to live with the 7 wounds that had been inflicted upon him, 3 on his head, 4 on his body, forever. that they would never heal, unless by some chance the finest knight in the land should lay hands upon him. And Sir Ur had traveled from court to court to court, trying to find that man who could heal him, and none could. He bowed low, or did his best to bow to the king, and the king replied, of course, we all will try. And Arthur himself stood up and laid his hands on the blood-encrusted garments that Sir Ur wore. He waited for a moment, but nothing happened. The poor man merely groaned in pain, and I could see the flicker of disappointment on Arthur's face. Surely he knew he was not the best, but how could he help but hope? And then he called Gawain and Bedivere night after night after night, and some strode up confident that they were the best. They put their hands upon the man a little too roughly, and nothing would happen. And some walked up with expressions of pity on their face, knowing they could do no good. I was one of the knights called. And when I came to him, I did my best to put my hands upon him gently, because already he looked so pained and so tired. And of course, nothing changed. After we all had walked up to this poor, pitiful hulk of a man, now looking as though he had been beaten as well as wounded, Arthur looked around and then said, where is Lancelot? Lancelot is the finest we have. You, boy, go get him, he said, pointing to me. And so off I ran. I searched in Lancelot's quarters, but he was not there. I ran down to the basements where I knew he sometimes fought. I checked everywhere I could, and there was no sign of him. I could hear the rumbling from the great hall, the voices beginning to get impatient, so I went back to Lancelot's quarters to see if perhaps I had missed some clue that might tell me where he was. And while I was there, I saw the blanket on his bed where it brushed the floor twitch just a bit. This is ridiculous. I thought Lancelot would not hide under the bed, but I crouched down and I looked, and there he was, knees pulled up to his chest, his arms around himself, his eyes closed, trembling as if he were ill. Sir Lancelot, I said, Sir Lancelot, what is wrong? The king has called for you. And there underneath the bed, he said, no, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. What if nothing happens? They say I'm the best, but I cannot do this. What if nothing happens and they all were wrong and everyone would know? Or, oh God, what if they were right? And I urged Lancelot out from under the bed. He finally crawled out and stood in front of me, pale and sweating, looking as frightened as any man I have ever seen. He looked me in the eyes. I am not pure. I am not good. I am just a man. But what if I am revealed? Oh God. And those words were a prayer. I took his hand and led him down, to the great hall like he was a child. He stood there in front of poor Sir Ur, who now was gasping for breath, and the room grew quiet. Lancelot blotted his forehead, closed his eyes, and put his hands on Sir Ur. And after a moment, the man's breathing began to ease, and we could see that no more fresh blood was oozing out from his wounds. And a moment later, he sat up and then jumped to his feet. Lancelot stumbled back. And Sir Ur said, I feel as fine as I did 20 years ago. And a great cry rose up in the hall of people celebrating. Everyone, that is, but Lancelot, who fell to his knees and put his forehead to the ground and wept as if he were a child that had been beaten. Oh God, I could hear him say, oh God, I am only a man. I am not special. I am only a man. I knelt down beside him. I wrapped my arms around him and held him while he cried, and the rest of the celebration tumbled around us, a few coming up to Lancelot and slapping him on the back and in congratulations, and then moving on. I'm only a man. Perhaps that's why you were able to heal him, I said, because you knew the truth of who you are. Well, that was a long time ago. The second miracle I witnessed was years later. After Lancelot healed Sir Ur, Lancelot, he could not help but succumb to his true nature, and soon war broke out between King Arthur and Sir Lancelot, and the land was ravaged. The wars stripped the land of its fertility, killed so many fine knights and good people, and in time Arthur grew weary of battle and commanded that we go and look for the Holy Grail. Perhaps, he said, this will bring peace and healing to the land. I can tell you this now, because it was all a long time ago, and the king is long dead. But when he said the Holy Grail, I thought, what good is a grail? We need you to talk to Lancelot. We need you to give in. But I knew he never would. And so we set out on the quest, night after night, spending years looking for some goblet said to hold the blood of Christ, a myth, I thought, a lie at best. And so many returned with beautiful cups, encrusted in jewels made of gold. And of course, none of those were a cup of healing. They were all cups to display, cups to make you think they were grand, but they were little more than metal and stone. And Arthur sipped from each of them, hoping that it would heal his heartache, heal the land. And it never did, because gold and jewels brought healing to no one. I was so tired of the quest. And it was late autumn, almost winter, when I decided it was time to go back home. I turned around and made my way back to Camelot. And on the way, every person I saw, I stopped and asked them if they had heard of the Holy Grail, if they knew where it might be. And by now the whole land had heard of our quest, and most looked at me with pity, some with disdain, and I would ride on. I came to a great pond, and in the middle of the pond, there was an old man hunched over in a little boat with a fishing rod and a line. I called out to him, "Old man," I said, "have you heard of the Holy Grail? I am on a quest." The old man looked over his shoulder to see me. He moved as if he were in such pain, and he grabbed the oars and began to row for the land. And when finally he came to the shore, I walked over to meet his boat, and he could barely stand. He was crippled. I could see him clutching at his gut as if he were wounded. When I helped him out of the boat, he looked at me and said, "Come with me. Let me give you a meal and we will talk." I looked around. There was no place to go. And I said, "Well, where is your home?" And he said, "Over there," pointing behind me. I turned to look, and there was a castle where none had been before, a great block of stone with a moat and a drawbridge over it. And I thought, this surely is not within the usual realm of my experience. Maybe he knows something. Maybe this is not all a lie. Maybe I'd best not to say no. If he can hide a castle, who knows what he could do to me? And so with equal parts fear and hope, I helped him walk step by halting, pained step into the castle. He led me into the great hall. There was a fire crackling in the hearth and a table set in front of it. The meal was simple enough, bread and meat and a few plain stoneware cups and a pail of water for us to drink. I was so hungry. I dug into the food as if it were the most delicious thing I had ever eaten before my host even started to eat. And after a bite or two, I finally stopped. I set down the meat and the bread, and I looked at him. He licked his lips, and I could see where they were parched and dry, and then he coughed so gently. He was thirsty, I thought. So I grabbed a cup and poured him some of the water from the bucket and passed it over to him. "Why have you given me this?" he said. I replied, "You seem to be thirsty." He took a sip, and the cough went away, and his lips no longer looked so dry. "Why are you searching for the Grail?" he said. "You look so tired." "Well, my king asked. He is in pain, and this is what he thinks will heal him, heal the land." The old man took another sip of water and sat up straighter, pulled his shoulders back as if he hadn't been upright in a long, long time. And then he looked at me with something that was almost a smile on his face. "Do you have any questions for me?" he asked. And as soon as he asked, all of my frustration boiled out. It was as if I'd been waiting for someone to ask me what I thought, and I found myself speaking. "What is the point of this? If he wants to end the wars, he knows what he must do. Why does he need this? Who does the Grail serve anyway? And the old man took a third sip of water and stood up, straight and strong, his hands not clutching at his gut, looking as if he had never been wounded. Why is he doing this, and who does the Grail serve? The Grail serves all of us, he said, and he smiled at me. Stand up, boy, he commanded, and I stood as if I had no choice about it. Perhaps I did not. And he gave me the cup. Take this to your king. This is what he's been looking for. And so I did. When I got back to Camelot, I filled the cup with water and I gave it to the king, and he drank as if he were parched. And afterwards, he ended the war. And finally, peace came to the land. Over the years, I have thought of this, and I thought about who does the Grail serve? How does it serve all of us? And what I finally know now is that it is the kindness that serves us all. So these were the two miracles I witnessed. Here, have a sip of water.
Marvelous, marvelous. Oh, Laura, thank you.
Thank you,
What
Jim.
what a great pairing of tales there. Really, really they fit together so well. Let me see. I'd just like to know, as you started to think about what you would tell for tonight, did one of them come to you before the other, or how did that process work for you?
So the first part of that, the Lancelot story, both of these are of Arthurian legend. And the Lancelot story, that line, he wept as if he were a child who had been whipped, is right out of Mallory. And as I was thinking of it, that line was just the refrain in my head. And so when that happens, I pay attention to it.
Sure.
And I actually find the Mallory story, the story of healing Sir, or the unhealed wound, to be a very difficult one in lots of different ways. But I very much like the idea that it is Lancelot's questioning of himself that actually makes it possible for him to do the healing. And I have always loved the story of the Fisher King.
Yeah.
I've always loved it. Yeah. And so I thought that perhaps those two, although canonically they aren't attached, I thought for this they would probably fit together well. And, you know, they are about healing and about the miracles that we create for each other.
Absolutely. And if there is poetic license, there is storyteller license, and you've
right.
exerted it just beautifully. Thank you.
Thank
there we are. So that's what you get when you hang out with storytellers. Okay. You get great stories. Some of them are traditional, some of them are personal, and all of them are told with an open heart. Mm-hmm. And I think we've heard that from each person today, that's the magic sauce, really, is trust and an open heart. And it's hard at times, but as Kristen has evidenced, practice can help. So practice your story listening skills and come back here tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 and at 8. Go to the YouTube channel and catch these and all the other stories as they come out. I'm very pleased to say that we have over 36 storytellers already telling. And I checked just before we came online tonight, and the stories on Facebook have been seen over 1,100 times in 6 days. And there's over almost 250 views on YouTube. So there's something going on here, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So again, tomorrow evening, 2:30 in the afternoon, tomorrow evening at 8, and on the YouTube channel. Thanks again.
Thank you.